Hello and welcome to the video. In this video we're taking a first look at this thing here. Now this is a slightly unusual frame from the people at Fossilsstuff.com. Now we originally saw this when we were at the drone show here at the UK back in December, and they were showing this on the stand, and the first production run is kind of out now, and we've managed to get our hands on one of the first ones out. Now we're going to actually build a quadcopter with this, and we'll talk about that towards the end of the video, so you'll see how it all builds up. But what I wanted to do in this video was just kind of show you the frame and go through our first impressions of this thing. Now the way it actually arrives, I can just take all the plates off, and the tolerances on this carbon fibre are pretty good actually, so with a little bit of a push it'll all come apart. This one's got a little cross piece, there we go. So how it actually arrives is like that in this initial packet, and the other bits that you get with it, you get a bag full of hardware. These are all the mounts and the other pieces that you need to actually put it together, and then you get one more bag of bits which looks like this, where you have your Fossil Racing stickers and you have your battery strap, and you also have this thing here, this black thread. Now this is actually what is going to go around the outside of the frame. So when you put this thing together, and to put it together, I mean, you can see how close the tolerances are from some of the scrapes that we've got on here. They just slide together, and then these pieces fit on the top and the bottom. And the way it works is that the actual, make sure I'm putting this on the right way around, it's going to help, isn't it? There we go. Hopefully you can hear on the mic those kind of little squeaky noises as the carbon fibre kind of slots home, and it kind of fits wonderfully together. So in here what you have around the end is this cable that goes around that provides tension, because this carbon fibre looks about 3 millimeters thick. It will flex ever so slightly if you push on it, and of course this is very different in terms of the way it's laid out from the traditional frames that we've used so far. So here's a quad of a similar size, and the idea with this is that because these arms are actually vertical, is all of that arm that's in the way of the prop isn't there in this frame, so it's going to be a little bit more efficient. You're going to get more of the thrust actually going down, not interrupting the flow of air, and potentially your battery might last a little bit longer too. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put this together, and we'll take a series of photos as I do. Then we'll come back and have a look at, talk about the build experience, and then we'll talk about the pieces that we're going to put on here, because we're going to put motors, ESCs, and we're also going to put one of the new Seriously Pro boards on the top as well, and do kind of a quick mini build series to set all of that up. So let me just stop the video here, unpack all of the hardware, and all we're going to do is just follow each of these steps piece by piece until we have this little guy put together. So building the frame itself is pretty straightforward. There's only 4 parts for the main frame, the 2 arms that lock together as we've seen, the top and bottom plate, and also a top plate that can go over the top of a flight controller to protect it, and that's carbon fibre too. The first part is you prepare the top deck, and that's by putting in the supports for the flight controller. The supports, interestingly, look like they're brass. I'm probably going to have to put a little washer on top of these, something like a plastic washer, to make sure that these don't short out any of the tracks on the underside of any flight controller you mount up here. And they are quite proud, but I'm guessing they have to be a little bit proud because there is only one way to route cables up from the arms into the flight controller, and that's into the central hub and up through the kind of keyhole that you've got in the center of the frame. Once you've got that done, then it's just a case of putting the frame together just like we did in the very first part of the video, and once you've got it together, then you put in the screws in the bottom plate to then hold the top and bottom plate together with those metal spacers. Now the metal spacers don't fit all the way to the bottom, so part of the screws are proud. I personally recommend, if you're going to be making something like this, is put a little dab of Loctite or thread lock on these bolts, because they're metal bolts going into metal threads and they can work loose over time. You'll notice here at the back that we have an extra wacky looking post here. This is the post that we're going to use to tension the wire that goes outside the frame. So we need to install that at this point as well. No point in bolting anything up, because you're going to have to tension the wire over a day or so until it's really nice and taut and you can pluck it like a guitar string, but we'll look at that in a second. Once we've got the main part of the frame together, the next thing to do is pop on the motor mounts. The motor mounts only have 2 holes for the motors. That means that most of the motors that I've ever played with, the cables for the motor are going to come out at the side. It would have been nice potentially to have 4 holes for the motors just for security. I'm sure that the guys have tested this and it's been fine, but personally, if I've got 4 holes at the bottom of a motor, I like 4 screws going into them. I have had the odd time where I found 1 screw coming quite loose at the bottom of a motor on a pre-flight check, and if there's 4 screws, that gives you 3 more to play with. Next thing you need to do then is thread this wire around the craft. Now you do get 2 of these wires. They seem to be some kind of high strength nylon or something like that. The way you do it is, first of all, you kind of anchor it in the corner down here. You go through one eye, round the corner, round through the other eye and back. And you need to do that same process, looping it around these 2 holes in each corner, and then eventually going back to where you started, putting it through the hole in the tensioning post and then making off the knot at the side. Now, it does cover all of this in the manual. What I would say is that the need to wind it round through each of the 2 holes on each corner wasn't as obvious as it should be for me. So some of you might spot in some of these early pictures that I actually just threaded it through. So we ended up using the second spare to take care of that problem. One thing I would recommend is, it talks in the manual about putting a little bit of oil on these holes as you're putting everything through. The reason for that is, as you start to tension this cable around the outside, which provides that rigidity to stop the flex in the arms because they're vertical, the arms will deflect a little bit and you will need to do a little bit of work just to make sure that the frame is completely square. And to do that, the cables are going to have to move very slightly, and because they're going to be under such a high tension, you don't want that to fray the cable or start to eat through the outside. Once you've got the knot made off at the end, and you can see here the kind of frayed ends, even with the very sharp scissors that I used here, and what you need to do is just use a match or a bit of heat, and you can melt that back into the cord itself. For those of you that ever played with paracord and making things with paracord, you'll know what that kind of looks and feels like. You just hold the heat to it and it kind of melts back into the knot, and it means that knot is not going to come undone. Once you've done that, then it's a case of sticking something in the hole on the turning post and cranking up the pressure, just turning it until you get that twanging sound from the cable. It recommends in the manual that you probably need to do this once, then stick a little screw to hold the tensioning post in place, and then come back in another 24 hours once some of that slack has gone, and do it again before you finally make it all off. So here is the frame all in one piece, and it's really straightforward to build. Apart from that little hiccup where we didn't put the thread through each of the 2 holes in each of the corners, it went together faster than most frames that we tend to build here. Now we're going to use this frame in a little bit of a build series here. So what we're going to do is we're going to use these DYS 2205 2300 motors. We're going to pop these on the arms. We're going to then use these DYS 20 amp BL Heli S ESCs. These will be nice actually. They're 1-shot 42 and also support multi-shot. So we're going to pop those on each of the arms for the power. These are very similar to some that we've used in one of our other builds, where they're supplied and they come inside a little case. Now there is additional heat shrink in the packs with these, and we'll probably use those so that we can mount these ESCs right up against the arms, because the whole idea of this frame is that there is minimum impeded airflow from the props blowing down. So having a big black box with the ESC in it probably isn't a great idea. And also the cooling vents in that plastic box are designed to be in the airflow as well. The vents are actually on the side, so that's not going to help us out. So we're going to mount them without that. The Neo is one of those flight controllers that a couple of people have asked me to take a look at because they've had a struggle with. It's going to pop on the top here. Again, we'll probably put a little nylon washer at the top of these brass posts to make sure it doesn't short the underside. And then on top of that, we're going to install its companion daughter board, which is the video transmitter. So that will all go together on the top. And that should make a reasonably neat installation. We'll be able to put the FPV antenna, we'll stick it on the back through one of the other mounting holes out on the tail of this particular frame from Fossilsstuff. Last thing to mention is that Fossilsstuff are also going to be selling some additional pieces that you can go with this frame as well. Now these are samples of the 3D printed cowls that can go over the flight controller on the top of your craft, designed for single, double and triple stack PCBs at the top. Now it does mean that it will provide a very nice, aesthetically pleasing protection for your flight controller at the top if you're using a standard size board. Unfortunately for us, with the Neo that we're using, because it has a power distribution board as part of it and the XT60 connector at the side, unfortunately we are not going to get a chance to use these nice little risers. The idea with those risers is they go around the flight controller, and then using the top carbon plate you can kind of make a nice little protective pod for all the electronics on the top. It's an interesting frame. It's going to be fascinating to see how the quad goes together and how the parts all fit on here. We've got to get a camera, we've got to get all the flight controller, power electronics and everything else on here and get it flying to see what it's actually like. It is an unusual idea, having the arms vertically mounted, and I do like the idea of using something lightweight like a cable to support those arms and reduce the flex and vibration in flight. So as I get to the point where we're going to do that mini build series, where we're actually going to put the Seriously Pro Neo and its VTX all together on this frame, I'll put a link here in the video when we've got those produced so you can go and have a look at them. But hopefully that's been a bit of an introduction for you to this slightly unusual frame, what it is, how it goes together, and how then you'd mount all the separate parts on it to make a working quadcopter. Thank you for taking the time to watch that video. There are lots of other videos on the channel and they're carefully ordered into playlists, so you may find that there are other videos on this same subject that you can go and watch. So I would recommend going into the playlist area of Painless 360 YouTube channel and looking around and seeing what there is. You never know what you might find. Thanks for watching, please like, subscribe and happy flying.